Hey there, sports fans. Buckle up because we've got one of the wildest stories you'll hear this year. Ippei Mizuhara, the former interpreter for Shohei Ohtani, is going to prison for stealing nearly $17 million from the very person he was supposed to be helping. I know, it sounds like the plot of a Hollywood movie, right? Well, spoiler alert, this is real life. Mizuhara has been sentenced to 57 months in prison after a long, twisted saga of gambling addiction, fraud, and betrayal. So, what went wrong? How did Mizuhara, who was by Ohtani's side for years, end up behind bars? Stick with us, because we're diving deep into this jaw-dropping story. But before we get into it, hit that subscribe button and join us as we break down the crazy details. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Context of the case. Alright, let's set the stage. Shohei Ohtani, one of the biggest stars in Major League Baseball, has had a loyal companion by his side for years, Ippei Mizuhara. Mizuhara wasn't just Ohtani's interpreter. He was a trusted confidant, de facto handler, and someone who had access to nearly every part of Ohtani's life. But, just like the best plot twists in sports drama, everything came crashing down after an investigation revealed Mizuhara's shocking betrayal. The man who was supposed to help manage Ohtani's career and finances ended up stealing millions from him. Mizuhara was sentenced to 57 months in prison for his actions. And the worst part? This wasn't some one-time mistake. It was a long-running scheme that cost Ohtani close to $17 million. So, how did this all go down? The theft and fraud. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Between 2021 and 2024, Mizuhara made a whopping 19.000 illegal wagers with a bookie. Yep, you heard that right, 19.000 bets. Talk about being deep in the hole. Mizuhara's gambling losses, totaling a net $40.6 million, weren't something he could easily cover. So he decided to dip into Ohtani's bank account, the very one that received the MLB star's hefty paycheck. Using his position as Ohtani's interpreter and close associate, Mizuhara was able to access funds from that account, transferring money to cover his own gambling debts. But it wasn't just about money. Mizuhara went to great lengths to cover his tracks, even impersonating Ohtani on the phone when he needed to make big transfers to his bookie. This man was so deep into his addiction, he put everything on the line, including his career and friendship with Ohtani. How the truth came to light. Things started unraveling in March 2024. Just before the MLB season opener, federal authorities got a hold of wire payments linking Ohtani's name to Mizuhara's bookie. Mizuhara, in an attempt to cover his tracks, tried to spin a story that Ohtani was actually covering his gambling losses. Yikes. But here's where it all goes sideways. Ohtani, who speaks a bit of English, caught wind of the situation when Mizuhara addressed the Dodgers clubhouse, trying to explain away the money transfers. Ohtani wasn't buying it, and within hours, his camp publicly distanced themselves from Mizuhara's story, leaving him in the dust. The Dodgers immediately fired Mizuhara, and the investigation began in full force. This wasn't just a little mishap, it was a full-blown criminal case. The fallout and investigation. As the investigation progressed, things only got worse for Mizuhara. Federal law enforcement and MLB's own officials started digging into the details. And soon it became clear that this wasn't just a gambling problem, this was an elaborate scheme involving bank fraud, wire fraud, and theft. Mizuhara was formally charged with bank fraud and tax fraud in April 2024. And his criminal complaint laid bare the extent of his wrongdoing. He turned himself in mid-April and, just a few weeks later, reached a deal to plead guilty. By June 2024, Mizuhara had officially pleaded guilty to the charges. His sentencing was scheduled for March 2025. And now, here we are, Mizuhara sentenced to 57 months in prison, with an additional 3 years of supervised release once he gets out. The gambling addiction defense. Now, let's address one of the things Mizuhara said when he was caught. His defense was that he had a gambling addiction. But prosecutors weren't buying it. While Mizuhara claimed that his addiction drove him to steal from Ohtani, the prosecutors pointed out that he didn't have a gambling history before he started dipping into Ohtani's bank account. This raised a lot of red flags. Was this really a gambling addiction? Or was it just a cover for a much bigger problem? Either way, The fallout was catastrophic. Mizuhara's personal life and career were over, and Ohtani was left to pick up the pieces. Conspiracy theories and fallout. Here's where things get even weirder. Some fans started to speculate that there was more to the story, claiming that perhaps Ohtani was actually involved in the gambling, and Mizuhara was simply taking the fall for him. Crazy, right? But let's be real, the idea that Ohtani, one of the most well-known athletes in the world, was secretly funneling money to a bookie while simultaneously managing an impossibly complex cover-up? It's almost like a Hollywood movie gone wrong. The truth, though, is much simpler and much more plausible. Mizuhara used his access to Ohtani's financial accounts to steal millions, and the whole thing blew up in his face. It's not some grand conspiracy. It's just a man's bad choices spiraling out of control. Conclusion. So, after everything we've covered, what do you think? Was Mizuhara's sentence fair? Should he have gotten a longer sentence? Or was 57 months enough? And, for the people still holding onto the conspiracy theories, are you convinced yet? It seems pretty clear that Mizuhara was in the wrong, and Ohtani was the victim here. In the end, this story serves as a warning about trust, addiction, and the consequences of crossing moral lines. Whether or not Mizuhara gets the help he needs in prison remains to be seen. But one thing's for sure, this is a saga that's not going away anytime soon. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay updated on this bizarre story and other wild sports drama, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Until next time, folks, thanks for watching. Everyone, make sure to check in next time for more shocking sports stories, conspiracies, and all the drama you can handle. We'll be keeping an eye on the next big twist in this story, so stay tuned. See you soon. Alright, Mets fans, gather round, because the long saga of Pete Alonso's free agency is finally over. And it ends with a twist. The Mets and Steve Cohen came out on top in a high-stakes staring contest against mega agent Scott Boras, securing a deal with Alonso that leaves Boras looking less than thrilled. In the end, the Mets get their slugger back, but Alonso's future is a bit more uncertain than he might have hoped. So what happened here? Did Boras fail to deliver the huge payday Alonso dreamed of? Stick around as we break it down. The battle over Pete Alonso. Let's rewind a bit. Pete Alonso, one of the top power hitters in MLB, entered free agency with hopes of scoring a huge, long-term deal. Back in June 2023, he turned down a $158 million, 7-year extension from the Mets, thinking he could land something bigger on the open market. And who did he turn to for that? None other than Scott Boras, the super agent known for getting top dollar for his clients. But here's the twist. Despite Alonso's impressive numbers, 226 home runs since 2019, trailing only Aaron Judge in that department, the market just didn't materialize like Boras had hoped. A lackluster 2024 season didn't help matters either. Alonso's chances of landing a mega deal like Freddie Freeman's $162 million contract faded fast. And by the start of 2025, it was clear he was going to have to settle for something shorter. The Mets, under the leadership of billionaire owner Steve Cohen, made a final offer of around $70 million for 3 years. Boras and Alonso balked, but eventually, somebody had to blink. The outcome. Fast forward to now. Alonso is back with the Mets, but the deal is far from the massive payday Boras was hoping for. Alonso signed a 2-year, $54 million contract with an opt-out after the 2025 season. This opt-out clause is a strategic move that allows Alonso to test the free agent waters again next winter. But it also shows that he's not locked into a long-term commitment just yet. The Mets get their power hitter back, and Alonso gets another shot at a bigger deal down the road. For the Mets, this is a huge win. Alonso is a fan favorite, a 4-time All-Star, and a guy who can anchor their lineup alongside superstar Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. Together, that trio could rival the best offenses in the league. And Alonso's return makes the Mets a serious contender in the NL. For owner Steve Cohen, it's a statement. While he's been known for making big splashes in the market, he drew a line in the sand with Alonso's contract. Cohen wasn't going to be held hostage by Boras or any agent looking to extract every penny. It's a power move that's as much about principle as it is about baseball. The Boras perspective. But for Scott Boras, This deal is a tough pill to swallow. He's known for securing the highest possible contracts for his clients. But with Alonso, things didn't go as planned. Remember, Boras promised Alonso a massive payday when he took over as his agent. But after a year of negotiation and waiting, Boras couldn't deliver the long-term deal Alonso expected. Sure, $30 million a year is nice. It's the second largest average annual value for a first baseman, but it's a far cry from the $200 million plus deals that Boras usually locks down for his top-tier clients. This situation also highlights a broader trend in the game. Long-term, high-value contracts are becoming harder to come by, particularly for players entering their 30s. Teams are less focused on rewarding past performance and more focused on what a player can do in the future. For Alonso, who's 30 and coming off a somewhat underwhelming season, that uncertainty was enough to keep teams from committing to a huge deal. What's next for Alonso? So, what's the takeaway for Pete Alonso? While it's not a disaster, he gets to stay with the Mets. He's still making a boatload of money. And he'll have another shot at free agency in a year. The situation is a reminder that time doesn't always work in a player's favor. Alonso, despite his incredible power numbers, didn't secure the massive long-term deal he hoped for. And while he's still a top slugger, his age and the uncertainty surrounding his future performance mean that teams might not pay up the way they once did. That opt-out after 2025? It gives him the chance to test the market again. But it's a gamble, both for him and for the Mets. Conclusion. So, what do you think? Did the Mets make the right call? Was Boras too stubborn to adapt to the changing market? Let me know in the comments below. One thing is for sure, Alonso is back. And the Mets are better for it. Whether this turns into the long-term deal he was hoping for will depend on his performance in 2025. But right now, this is a win for Steve Cohen and the Mets. If you liked this breakdown, make sure to subscribe for more updates on the biggest stories in sports. Until next time, folks, thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll be back soon with more updates and analysis on all things baseball. Stay safe, stay tuned, and as always, let's go Mets.